Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new unboxing video. And today is something a little different. Well, it's not that little, but it is quite different. This is Zeus Toys Shockwave. So this is of course the latest in a long line of official Movieverse toys being copied or reproduced, typically to fit in with the MPM Movie Masterpiece line as a rule. And as with a number of previous examples, it's actually based on the Studio Series design, although it has been significantly upscaled and retooled in the process. Last thing before we begin, this toy is available from Show-Z Store now, so I'll go ahead and put a link to their site in the video description in case he takes your fancy. Anyway, let's see what it's all about. Okay, and here is Zeus ZS-01 in his box, and yeah, I mean it's huge, absolutely huge. I don't really know what else to say about it, but it's massive. Can't even really fit it all in, but without making some major adjustments anyway. But to be honest, I'm not too worried, as it's not the kind of box that I'm going to be keeping. In all fairness, it'll end up being recycled. I mean, it's already quite crumpled on the front. Creases all along here, all along the side as well. It's not a box that's built to last in any way, shape or form, but it's got a picture of the toy on the front. It says Guardian of the Universe there, and just down below you can't see it, but it just warns you that specifications, colours and contents may vary from illustrations, so that's always reassuring. But let's check out the contents. After all, it's the toy itself that we came to see, right? So can't wait to have a look. Really, really, really big box, honestly. Kind of crazy. Woof. There we go. And here he is in the clamshell, and he looks fantastic. Really, really excited. Really, really excited about this guy. Can't wait to see it in hand. Looks like the head has come loose a little bit in the packaging, but I'm sure that's not going to be a problem. So we'll go ahead and get that clamshell open. Lots of tape around the outside. Right, tape's all cut, so here we go. And there's the toy itself. Looks great. Looks really, really good. Got to get him out of these little plastic ties. That's kind of almost reminds me of twisty ties. Ugh. Right, he's all out, so let's take a look at the toy. Right, well, here's the main body of the toy anyway, missing the head at the moment. We've then got this little wibbly wobbly cable, which Shockwave fans I'm sure will be familiar with. We've got another weapons piece, so we'll check that out in just a minute. We've got the head itself, which looks really, really superbly detailed, and obviously has a bit of a light-up feature as well, so we'll check that out. It's also missing the ears, I suppose you want to call them at the moment as well, or antennae, whatever you want to call them, but missing those pieces, so we'll go ahead and just attach those. They're just here like that, two little plastic painted pieces. Don't know if they're supposed to come off like that in the box, or if they're supposed to be detached, or if they've that's just happened during shipping, but there you go, they're loose, just rattling around inside the box like that. Fortunately, it doesn't appear to be any major drama to just reattach them like so. They just sort of, there we go, just peg on fairly easily anyway. So I'll go ahead and do the other one and we'll get him assembled up. Head on. Okay, well, let's connect up that hose piece. So here is the gun, and you just kind of swivel it on like that. It's quite a tight fit. And then that just connects around to this piece on the backpack. So similar story. It's got to work it in like that. It is a bit of a squeeze, but well, at least once it's gone, it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. And then this other weapons piece just pegs in like so on his other arm. Oh, and evidently that blade weapon can also be stored on the underside of his arm by pegging in just below the elbow joint just here. So it's completely up to you. I think it looks good both ways, to be fair, so you can have it either on the side or underneath. Up to you, personal preference. And there he is in his robot mode, and my word, that's quite an impressive looking figure. It's very, very pointy as well. I would recommend caution, because there are lots of sharp edges on this guy. Some bits like this which are kind of more rubbery to the texture, but just, yeah, I don't know, overall lots of little spikes, lots of little bits that you're going to impale yourself on if you're just not too careful. But yeah, I mean, looks wise, he looks really superb. I love the color, really love the purple color that they've gone with, and it just kind of brings that, I don't know, that sense of G1-ness to it, which some people may love, some people may hate. It depends on your personal preferences. For me, I dig it. I think it's nice to add a bit of color to the otherwise kind of very gray, sort of metallic looking typical Bayformer-esque vibe. So for me, it works. And overall, I think he looks really, really handsome. He's a good proportions, nice sculpt, looks really detailed, and just overall, yeah, does the business. He's quite awe-inspiring. We'll cover off articulation properly in just a minute, but I have unfortunately already noted that there's quite a bit of looseness on this guy, particularly in the wrist just here, a bit in some of the legs as well, so we'll have a look at that. So he certainly looks impressive, looks really impressive, but I don't know. Yeah, I have noted some loose joints, so, and it does seem like he's not the most stable, so we'll have to have a good look at that as well and just kind of suss him out. But certainly, you know what, if you're just going to have him on the shelf and you've got no concerns about such things, I mean, he stands really nicely, looks really, really superb. You know, certainly no worries on that score, because yeah, what an impressive sculpt to start off with. That's the first thing to note. And I think a large part of that is that head sculpt, which I think just looks horrific. I mean, absolutely horrific, but in a good way. I mean, it's probably true of a lot of the Bayformer designs, but you know, I think it looks absolutely really lovely. I think lovely, is that the right word? But those teeth are really something. Really like the eye. I mean, we'll check out the light up feature in just a minute. The detail's superb. Really nice sculpt. Even little bits, like you can just see here these little ridges on the underside of the chin, which, I mean, you know, that's superb level of detail going on there. So really, really love it. Think that head sculpt's amazing. The light up feature is really easy to activate too, as it's literally just a button behind the head. You just move it forward slightly, and oh, if you can find it, there we go. No, there we are. There we go. And yeah, batteries came pre-installed on my copy as well, so hey, bonus, free batteries. But that really adds something as well. I mean, how awesome does that look? Lovely sort of, it's actually a red light. On camera it's sort of like glowing a little bit more, but it's, you know, to the eye it's like a proper red, but it looks superb. I really, really like it. Right, well, there's no instructions with this guy, so I'm figuring a lot of this out as I go, but I have just noted that there's a little switch here, which if you turn it on, just allows you to light up the cannon, which is pretty cool. So, and that actually looks great. I really like the LED in there. That looks superb, and of course it's kind of the the finishing touch, if you will, to that arm cannon generally. So nice light up feature, seems to work well, and batteries included again, so that's good. And it took me a minute to find it, but there is a similar switch on these rear thrusters as well. So the bottom one of the three, which is this one, well, you can just about, there we go, squeeze your finger underneath if you're careful, and turn that one on. There you go, it looks pretty cool. The other two are nigh on impossible. You're going to have to pop them up to activate, but that one you can do, and it looks good. So yeah, you've got no chance of getting your finger under these ones. So I think you're just going to need to pop them off like so. Yeah, definitely going to need to pop these off, as I say, because just looking at the back of it where the switch is, you can just see it there. There's no way you're going to get your finger round underneath that when it's in place. So there we go, you can just switch it on like that, and that's what it looks like all lit up. I think that looks really, really cool. I mean, it's funny because, I don't know, I'm never normally that fussed about light up features on my toys, as it's not really something that I need necessarily, but when they work as well as this does, yeah, it's kind of fun, isn't it? It looks cool. I really, really dig it. And there it is from the back with all three of those LEDs lit up, and yeah, it looks pretty cool. How often I'll do that, I don't know. Let's be honest, the fact that you have to pop off these top two especially is irritating. I mean, it's one thing just pushing a button on that bottom one, but having to actually remove the other two, whilst it's not a big deal, just means I probably won't use it very often. But it does look cool, and kind of, I don't know, looks like something very weird and Matrix-esque almost, you know, like from the third Matrix film. Maybe it's just me. Really dig the detailing on this kind of rib cage section just here on the chest. Looks great. Really like this little circular piece here too. Overall, the sculpt is very intricate, really nice and detailed. The painted finish looks great too. It's a kind of like a real scratched, worn, looks like a real worn alloy type finish, and it's just great. Really, really good job. You can see a bit more of what I mean by that here, and again, it just looks like really kind of eroded, worn, scratched metal. It's got that kind of scratched stainless steel effect to it, and it's It's quite intriguing actually, because when you look at this guy, you would expect it to be metal. You know, you look at it and honestly you think it would be cold to the touch, but it's not. That is plastic. But it just looks superb. Similar sort of painted detail and worn detailing on the end of the gun nozzle. That again just looks awesome. Really love the effect. Really love the effect in hand there. You know, even on areas such as the other hand, you know, the left hand, the paint applications and the level of intricate detailing are just superb. Really lovely. I mean, if I could get a level of that kind of painting on every toy that I own, I'd be very happy. Very happy indeed. And lo and behold, some very impressive looking treads on the back of his legs for the tank mode. And these little cogs and wheels and all kinds in there. It's just a visual treat, honestly. I mean, it's so funny because, you know, toys like this tend to be relatively simple, actually, given the sort of nature of them and, you know, the upscaled design. But just it's the finish and the polish and all of that really brings them to life. It's just breathtaking, honestly. I mean, need I go on? I feel like I could go on about it all day, you know what I mean? It's wherever you look, there's just lovely little paint applications everywhere. It's really great. I kind of want to talk about the feet for a second because they look really cool. I mean, actually with these three horns here, particularly with this one, they really remind me of almost like a triceratops. I've never really noticed it on Shockwave's design before, but yeah, it looks kind of almost I don't know, like a slag or something like that. It's very funny. Yeah, but the feet are really nice. They kind of got this cool, intricate design. Again, really like the paint apps just on the hinge there, on the ankle joint. Sadly, they don't really hold the figure in place, but we'll look at that more in just a minute when we cover off articulation. So, you know, I'm sure I've banged on about it enough, but purely from a look perspective, this guy is incredible. Really very strong, solid first impression on that score. So, you know, if you are just gonna get him out the box, put him on the shelf, stick the eye on occasionally, then, you know, you're quids in, really. You're absolutely quids in, because he's just glorious. Really lovely sculpt, lovely detail. You know, do I need to keep saying it, really? It just looks awesome, absolutely awesome. Where it is let down quite considerably is definitely in the joint department. I mean, already just kind of, you know, handling him, moving him around and getting him into position for some of these shots, I can tell you that the joints are just not up to snuff. Sadly, they're just very loosey-goosey in parts. So yeah, let's take a look. So firstly, in terms of articulation, you've got the head, and that's got a really decent range of motion. It can look up, it can look down. It's on a ball joint, so it can really go all around. And then there's a separate hinge joint in there as well. So actually, it you know, there's quite a bit of extra motion in there should you really need it. But yeah, that's really good. Then coming over to the shoulder joint, they're on a double hinge. So there's one hinge here which moves back and forth like so. And then there's a second hinge just inside the actual shoulder mechanism itself, which goes from side to side. So, and they've got, I mean, you can hear it there, really nice clicking. So that sounds good. And this left arm, his left arm, is not too bad, but it's less successful on the right arm, sadly. Yeah, I mean, just coming over to this right shoulder, this is where it all starts to go a bit wrong, because it's the same mechanism, but when you bring that arm up, it's just going to sag back down every time. I haven't had it hold in place once. There you go. And just to show what I mean, there you are. It just sags right down. The ratchets, whilst they do click nicely, so in theory that sounds good, there's just no strength there whatsoever. That just gives way every single time. And to be honest, it's even a little bit the same at an outward angle. You can see, yeah, it's better, but still, that doesn't hold. You know, it doesn't hold at all. So there's really just no strength in those ratchets. It's poor. Now back over here on the left arm, his left arm, this elbow joint is actually quite nice and tight, and that bends roughly about 90 degrees, and that will hold in place. So that's something. And there is just underneath here, just above the shoulder joint, there is a little bicep swivel as well. So there you go, and that does hold just about. Now, sadly, the same can't be said of the right arm. Again, this is the gun arm just here. And, you know, whilst the actual elbow joint itself clicks nicely and will kind of hold in place, it's the bicep swivel that lets you down on this occasion. Because, again, the gun is just too heavy for it. So it's just going to sag every time. And if I let go, you can just sort of see that it's not going not hold in place at all. So there really is no way for him to hold his gun up. It's a very sad story. And on a toy like this, where, it's all about the gun arm, it's not a good show. Quite a bit of articulation overall in this hand. I mean, all of the fingers are very freely moving. They've all got several joints, one just at the top knuckle there, a hinge on each finger. So there's a lot of free movement generally. They can all swivel as well. So they were all kind of twisted out of the box, actually, required a bit of readjustment. And the same is true of the thumb. So that's relatively successful. They're not the tightest, but, it works fine. What is a bit naff is that the wrist is just, I mean, you can see there's no solidity there whatsoever. Sadly, that just flops around like anybody's business. So, yeah, not the best. There is actually a tiny little thumb just molded into the gun arm as well. This is the overall gun arm. And there's a little bit of articulation for you there, just on that one thumb, I guess, just to give the appearance that his hand is in there. This gun arm doesn't come off in any way, though. It's just molded in piece. But there you go, just one little thumb. Just want to talk about these hips for a second because, yeah, they're not the best. Not the best, sadly. Now, this has been quite a cause of complaint from a lot of people that have had this figure in hand because I believe that they actually changed the design of the hips from the original Studio Series mold, and perhaps not for the better. So the idea was good to make it more screen accurate or what have you, but the result is just, yeah, doesn't really work. Now, I've been lucky so far, touch wood, that I haven't had any breakage problems. I know a few people have had some quite serious breaks with these hips, so that's really not good. But even without that, I mean, you can see here, look, there's just absolutely no strength in those hips whatsoever. It just flop around, both of them. There you go. Just flop around like anybody's business. So, that for me, yeah, the arm is annoying too, but this is like the main problem in terms of stability on this toy, because he just doesn't want to stand in place at all as a result of those hips. I mean, genuinely, just a little, there you go, just a little tap and over he goes. So there really isn't any solidity whatsoever, sadly. I'm afraid that the same is true of the hips. Moving forwards, I mean, you can get a decent range actually. They go above 90 degrees at the hips, those legs, so that's good, but then they just sag straight back down. So there really isn't anything good to say about those hips whatsoever. They just aren't up to snuff. Knees seem decent though. I mean, there's a really nice clicky ratchet there, and actually that holds quite tightly just at the knee joint, so that's something. And then there is a really decent ankle tilt as well in terms of articulation, so that's good. And really kind of needed on a toy of this size. It's not the strongest though, again, and I mean, the main offender is definitely the hips, but this is not doing any favors in terms of stability for this guy either, sadly. Oh, and I forgot to mention, but there's a bit of back and forth on the old toes there as well. Again, really generous articulation on these feet, and that actually doesn't feel too bad in terms of joints. Well, it's worth mentioning that this gun hose does have quite a bit of articulation too. I believe, again, they upgraded the design on this from the original Studio Series figure, and that's actually now ball jointed throughout. So that's kind of cool, because it will actually, if you bend it into a certain position, I mean, like that, for example, I mean, he says, it will stay, just about. So yeah, it actually looks really cool and nice and chunky. So look, overall, the joints really aren't up to snuff, but it's not that you can't pose him nicely, because, I mean, as shown here, it is possible with a bit of thought to get him into a decent pose, and it will kind of just about hold. I mean, this, I'm not going to lie, this took a bit of doing to get just to that, kind of with the gun arm in that position. I've just about found the right kind of sort of nano click, if you like, just to get it into a position where it'll hold. But I've managed it. So it is possible, but it doesn't at any point feel like it's solid or gonna stay like that. I'd be very nervous about putting him on a shelf, for example, and posing him in this way, just because I don't know. I feel like those joints could go at any time. I wouldn't post, not that I would these days anyway, but I wouldn't have him on a shelf above your bed, let's put it that way. Do you know what I mean? You might get a nasty surprise in the middle of the night. And it's a shame that those joints are so bad. As honestly, posing wise, he's great, like really good. I mean, if the joints were there, man, I'd just be in awe of this thing, genuinely, because it just looks the business. I mean, it really does. I reserve this phrase for when something is as good as this looks, but it really is the nuts, honestly. It just looks awesome. And, you know, posing-wise, I love the legs. I love the way that they pose. There's a lot of possibility in terms of posing with this figure. I mean, it's not the most fluid. There are some restrictions, you know, like obviously with the elbows, for example, only go just about 90 degrees, and they are slightly impeded by some of the armor and things like that here. But once you get him into a decent pose, man, yeah, it's just awesome. But there's no guarantee he's going to stay that way. It does annoy me how this hand won't stay in place as well. I find that really frustrating. But I don't know. It's such a shame. Honestly, I really want to love it. I really, really want to love it. But it is frustrating to pose on that basis. I mean, it's not even a question of like having it stay in a pose, you know, because of the joints. It's a question of getting it into a pose to begin with, because the hips just want to give way, and it can be frustrating because you feel like it should just be so easy, but it just doesn't allow for it, really. And it's a real shame. I mean, I'm going to give it a go, I think, with, I don't know, a bit of super glue or future, you know, furniture polish or whatever. I think that's going to be necessary. I'm not 100% hopeful, though, just because I don't know, it's a lot of looseness. It's a lot of looseness. I'm definitely going to need to apply a bit of glue on these these ears as well, these antennae, whatever we call them. But yeah, they've popped off a couple of times too, so slightly frustrating. I guess the ultimate thing that I could say about it is that, you know, I've got a few of these oversized figures now, and rightly or wrongly, and this is the first one that I can honestly say is quite obviously a KO. And it's a shame because the finish is great, the look is amazing, like really, really amazing, but just the joints really let it down, and consequently it feels like a KO. It feels like what people imagine KOs are going to feel like, you know, just that lack of quality or whatever else. So that's a real disappointment. And you know, I think if you're going to have this guy and just put him in a fairly neutral stance on the shelf and you're not too worried about handling him, then yeah, he's awesome. Just looks really, really awesome in that regard. I think if you're into handling your toys and you want them to be in any way kind of nicely posable, playable, any of that, then yeah, think twice. Definitely, I would say that, because it's going to be a disappointment in that score. I guess it's just a real shame because it feels like, you know, with the MPM line, the official line, having its fair share of duffers as well in the quality department, it just feels like, man, can movie fans just not catch a break in terms of masterpiece scale designs? It's you know, it's a rocky road. I should mention that I'd advise some caution with some of the plastic as well. I just had one of the arm bits just on the underside there just pop off, and it's gone on, you know, again, relatively easily, but you may find just occasional bits popping off. It's fair to say that it just doesn't feel generally like the quality is particularly, you know, there. So it's definitely one to be a little bit careful with, sadly. Such a shame, as he just looks so robust and so menacing. But yeah, just the in-hand experience, not there, sadly. But hey, he does look amazing. So I know I keep saying it, I keep kind of drooling over it, but yeah, he does look incredible. So anyway, let's go ahead and we'll do some comparisons of this guy anyway and check him out versus a few other toys. Right, well, it's time for a few comparisons, as I say, and I've been really, really looking forward to this one, particularly as doing comparisons of these really big MPM style bots is just a lot of fun, particularly when you've got you know, much smaller stuff to compare them to. I mean, I think just purely for a bit of a laugh, here he is with Human Alliance Frenzy. Sorry, it makes me chuckle anyway, even if it doesn't anyone else. I have Human Alliance Frenzy even in my collection, just because I wanted a little frenzy to complete my 2007 Bayformers Decepticons, and he does go quite nicely. If I just pop this guy in as well with Masterpiece Barricade, there you go. I don't actually have the Human Alliance Barricade at all. I skipped that one, but a friend of mine very kindly donated his Frenzy to my collection. And there you go. It's yeah, it's a laugh, isn't it? It just shows you how massive the Shockwave is. He just looks very, very intimidating by comparison. But let's do another comparison now with a couple more MPM bots. Here is Masterpiece Ironhide, and a bit of a, a DNA design upgrade kit on him as well, just to enable him to stand. Well, stand and the shoulders to be in place, let's put it that way. There we go, there's Masterpiece Bumblebee. And then we'll just sneak in at the front here, Masterpiece Jazz. And I know I already kind of alluded to it with the official MPM line having a few duffers in terms of quality control, and you know, all three of these guys have got their individual issues. I mean, Ironhide is well publicized for having some major QC errors. That upgrade kit, that DNA design upgrade kit, is just worth its weight in gold, frankly, in terms of making this figure even slightly usable. But they do look nice, at least. That's something. So, and in terms of comparisons, it gives you a really good idea of the scale, the sheer scale, the size of Shockwave there. Alternatively, you might want to see what he looks like versus Masterpiece Optimus Prime. And let me be clear that this is the official MPM Optimus Prime. Whenever I watch video reviews of these kinds myself, and you know, they have a comparison with a movie Optimus Prime, I'm always like, which one is that? Because there are so many knockoffs out there, it's ridiculous. And then it always inevitably turns out that it's some oversized thing that's like twice the size or whatever else. So sometimes I just want to see what it looks like versus the official dude. And yeah, but here he is. So, I mean, he's not small by any means. I mean, he's roughly, yeah, he's about the same height as, if you collect G1 Masterpiece, he's roughly the same height as MP10 or MP44. So that should give you a good idea there of how big Shockwave is. But let's add a bit of an unofficial flair as well. Another Optimus Prime, movie Optimus Prime. This is Unique Toys Challenger. And yeah, I do find him a bit of a challenge. All joking aside, people rave about this toy, and I do like it. I mean, there's a lot to be said for it. I do like various elements of the design, but yeah, I have a lot of grumbles about it as well. But ask me about that another time. But yeah, anyway, he's a big bot. He's bigger than the official, you know, the 2007 Masterpiece, the official Masterpiece. He's quite noticeably bigger, but still looks fairly tiny in comparison to old Shockers there, doesn't he? Right, well, we've done Optimi. Let's have a look at some Megatrons now. And here is, of course, the official Masterpiece. Again, this is not a KO. This is the official Masterpiece Megatron from the 2007 film, the MPM version. And there you go. And again, big toy, really big toy. Doesn't look it necessarily on account of this particular comparison, but yes, it's a very, very big toy. And I think they look great together. I mean, obviously, it's always weird with Masterpiece-styled movie lineups because, you know, these two designs never actually meet on screen. You know, they're from different films, but still, you know, maybe that's how you would like your collection to look. You know, you could still line them up and just kind of imagine it happening, you know, before the films even began, or wherever your headcanon takes you. I don't really mind, but it's up to you. But they do look cool together. I dig it. Then going forward in time with Megatrons, we have the Revenge of the Fallen version. This is actually the Dream Factory toy, TF Dream Factory. This is not the Black Mamba version, which I often see in comparisons as well, which is, you know, a bit bigger. So there you go with the the TF Dream Factory version anyway. And I think they look ace. I think they look really, really cool. I actually like the scale of this guy. You know, some people think that maybe he's not big enough or whatever else, but I think it's a gorgeous figure, not too overcomplicated. And, you know, from what I've seen of TF Dream Factory so far, they do some really good quality stuff. I'm impressed with it. So yeah, and I like the way that looks. And of course, one final Megatron to add to the comparisons. This is Unique Toys Dragoon. I have plenty of puns lined up about that name, I can assure you. Anyway, I did a review of this guy recently, not on YouTube, but on TF Source's blog, a pictorial review. and gave him a glowing review. I really love this figure. And it is tall, really, really tall, as you can see. Kind of more svelte proportions than maybe the actual film shows you, but really, really nice design overall. And he's not far off Shockwave, actually, in terms of head height. You can see how the two of them look there. So if you do have Dragoon in your collection, then that should give you a fairly decent idea of how tall Shockwave is. Anyway, he's just, you know, wider as well. And whilst we're hovering on the subject of unique toys, we'll take a look at another of their designs. This is, of course, Peru Kill, which is their lockdown from Age of Extinction, the bounty hunter. And nice design overall, weird hips, but still cool. And yeah, he looks almost quite small by comparison. It's quite funny to see. And then we've also got DX9 La Haya, their hot rod. I'm not going to do a French accent. My wife is French and it would not go down well. But there you go. Anyway, of course, DX9 and Unique Toys, you know, they have a lot in common, it's fair to say, in case that's not, you know, not known. But there you go. It gives you a good idea of how these three toys look together. Going to bring in another third-party bot now. This is Devil Savior Split. Now, here we go. The challenge of this thing, of course, is just getting it to stand up. Hang on, get the backpack hanging in stably. I gave this thing a fairly scathing review. Here we go. Don't breathe on him. Don't breathe on him. You can probably see why I gave it a fairly scathing review just by that little entrance just there. That's, that's about the best I can get him to stand. This thing, honestly. And this is kind of what I mean when I say that I feel like, you know, movie fans, Movieverse fans, Bayformer fans, whatever you want to say, I feel like they do get a bit of a raw deal sometimes because it just feels like there's no consistency in terms of the quality that we see, whether it's official, third party, or even the, you know, some of the KOs and things as well. It can often be a bit of a mixed bag, sadly. And Split is definitely the a good example of that. But hopefully they'll get it together for the rest of this set because the design itself is awesome, really nice, and would love it to come together for the full combined Devastator mode. Would love it. Okay, well, we're going to do a few more comparisons now with some other KOs, Oscos, if you will, oversized KOs. This, of course, is Black Mamba Starscream, the original version. There's also a kind of repainted version with some funky decals and things on it. And of course, we have the official MPM Starscream just landing now. I mean, I've seen various folks in the old US of A saying that they've just, you know, popped into their local Target, and there it is on the shelf. How nice. Not so simple in the UK, of course. But hopefully I've got one on the way, so we'll see that soon. But for now, here is the oversized KO from Black Mamba, and yeah, it gives you a good idea. I actually really rate this design, so it'll be interesting to see versus the official Masterpiece. But for today, anyway, those two look pretty cool together. I like that a lot. We've then got another Black Mamba effort. Here is their Brawl, which is also another Studio Series design, of course, originally. Takeoff of a Studio Series design. Real effort to get this guy to stand, to be fair. There we go, got it. Just weird feet that mean that he just kind of, I don't know, never stands very stably. It's a little bit of a, it's a quirk, let's say it's a quirk. But I do like the design a lot, really, really like the design of this guy. I had the Wei Jiang Brawl originally, and I like that one as well, and to be fair, it's a much more stable and solid toy. But I did opt for this guy just because the look of him is very, well, it's a lot more screen accurate, let's be fair. So I did like the design better overall. It's just, I must do something about those feet at some point. So, but yeah, they look really, really cool together. Dig it, like it a lot. Speaking of Wei Jiang, here is their Blackout Hide Shadow. Of course, Wei Jiang have had a bit of trouble recently, very well publicized, but here's their Hide Shadow. And it's interesting because that's a big old toy, but still put into the shadow, pardon me, by Shockwave there. And I guess, you know, head height, obviously you're looking at here. it really doesn't, kind of compare to Shockwave's head height. Obviously, then he's got all this bulk and what have you on top as well. But yeah, really, really interesting to see. And then, of course, that figure also comes with a little Scorponok. There he is. I love this little thing. And of course, that just looks tiny by comparison to Shockwave. So it gives you a fair idea, anyway, of how those two shape up. Next up, we have TF Dream Factory again, with their Bone Crusher, which actually does stand very stably, but I'm just making a making a real hash of it there. But there you go. This is actually not an oversized KO. This is an original design, so it's third party. And absolutely love this toy. Really got no bad things to say about it overall. Complicated transformation, but not not horrific. It's just complicated, really. It's still quite doable, and all clips together nicely. And I just love the way it looks as well. I feel like they've really kind of captured that quirky original design that is just so reminiscent from the first 2007 film. And yeah, they look great together. Really, really cool. And then we have another oversized fella for you. And well, why not save one of the biggest anyway till last? This is the Black Mamba Grimlock. Really quite impressive, awesome looking thing that it is. Absolutely huge. And you can see that, yeah, it's just a little bit bigger than Shockwave actually. So that might give you a fair indication if you've got this guy. But what I will say, I mean, they're both originally Studio Series designs, so there's a lot in common between these two in theory. But what I will say is that the quality on this guy, it's just night and day versus the Shockwave. Really, really is night and day. And that's because, the joints on this guy are solid. Transforming him, everything else, it just feels very, very robust. And it's kind of everything that's missing from the Shockwave release, sadly. It does put them apart. And it's a real shame because it can be done. It can be done. But yeah, they still look good together all the same. I do also have the Scorn as well, but he's roughly the same height. So gives you an idea for now. And as a final set of comparisons, here he is with a couple of G1 inspired designs. Well, G1 designs, certainly. This is Masterpiece Shockwave, Masterpiece Laserwave, the original, not the repainted toy version, although I do have that one as well, but I just thought it'd be interesting to see versus the original colors. There we go. And then we've got the actual G1 toy, which a lot of people are surprised to see is bigger than the Masterpiece, the Masterpiece Laserwave, which, yeah, it's a big toy, the original G1 guy, and still, I mean, one of the best, just absolutely awesome toy that it is. And then we'll just sneak in here, little lad, the Action Master Shockwave as well. There's the Shockwaves. Yeah, they look really, really cool together. I mean, Shockwave is one of those that it's just such an iconic design with the single eye, the gun on the hand, all of that. And I do think that in terms of how a lot of Bayformer designs were interpreted from the from the original G1 designs, I do think that I always felt like they did a really good job with Shockwave. They made it its own thing, but still, it's got the right beats in place in order to let you know who it's supposed to be. Transformers now is what, 36 years old? That's scary. But it's been through so many reinventions. I'm all for it. I like seeing old characters given, new life, new design, whatever else, and seeing what they come up with. And to me, in terms of the movieverse, this is one of the best, personally speaking, anyway. But it's great to see all of those toys represented and looking quite cool next to each other. It looks great. Okay, well, it's time to take a look at the transformation. Now, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, there are no instructions in the box, so this is going to be a fun one. I don't think it's too complicated, to be fair, but I'll figure it out as we go. Okay, there we go, transformation done, and that really wasn't too bad, to be fair. I mean, obviously this is an upscale of the Studio Series toys, we've already said, so you know, the design itself is relatively straightforward, and that's obviously reflected here. Even if it is, you know, significantly larger, it's no more complicated. So yeah, just nothing really to worry about. Actually, I did find I'd mentioned the hips earlier as being a potential point of worry for some. I didn't have any concerns there actually transforming those bits. They seemed absolutely fine for me, so that's really good. I would say that initially they didn't feel like they're gonna untab from the robot mode, but I just pushed back ever so slightly on the sort of crotch piece, you know, on either hip, and then actually they were able to kind of slide out to the side a bit easier. So, you know, maybe that will help you. I don't know, but there was really nothing there of any kind of concern, and actually it's relatively easy to kind of figure out, you know, where the legs are going to go and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, fine. And the result is an interesting one, isn't it? Do you know what? I was racking my brains, and I'll be completely honest, there was no way that I was going to check out Dark of the Moon again to prepare for this, because there are very, very few things on this earth that are going to convince me to watch that film again, to be completely honest. As much as I do like the designs, some of the films themselves, woof. But that's just my personal opinion. All respect to people that like them. But, you know, I can't actually for the life of me remember Shockwave transforming on screen. So is this accurate? I don't know. You'll have to tell me in the comments. I don't recall him transforming at all. So, but still, I kind of dig this. I think it looks pretty neat. I mean, yeah, it's ever so slightly fan modey, but it works. It carries off well enough. I mean, I guess it follows the grand old tradition of Cybertronian modes, doesn't it? Which has been a thing pretty much since, what, 1986? Where it's, you know, just sort of lay down a robot and fold them over and it's Cybertronian. So I guess it kind of works in that vein. And to be fair, you know, there's not too much obvious robot stuff going on. I mean, besides the things that are kind of meant to be there, like this head at the front. We'll have a look at that properly in just a minute. But actually the shape of it and whatever else it does, it makes a fairly convincing kind of tank mode. You know, it's got nice treads. The gun is kind of, you know, well in place. The proportions of it are decent. Yeah, it's all right. It also rolls pretty nicely. So, you know, that's kind of a cool feature. You know, the treads themselves don't move in any way, but there are little wheels on the underneath, and yeah, it does roll. And you know, it kind of gives me really serious vibes of Revenge of the Fallen Megatron. You know, with that tank mode. I guess just the way, particularly that the head is at the front, the general shape of it. Yeah, it really reminds me of that. I think in that regard, it works. It works quite well. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just the fact that the sort of sheer nature of this design is that it's so panelly and kind of frenetic and messy anyway, that it kind of hides a lot of the gumph. I mean, like here, for example, you've got the hand from the robot mode, which, I don't know, I could fiddle around with it a bit and maybe make a better job of it, but it just sort of sits there. It's not really, it doesn't really hide away in any way, shape or form. And yeah, I mean, that could be better, but equally it looks fine. I mean, to be honest, I don't need it to be any neater than that, because the whole design is quite chaotic, so it sort of works. Actually, to be fair, to my eye, the bits that work less successfully on some of these sort of upscale Studio Series designs or whatever else are these sorts of, you know, joints that are fairly obvious just in the middle there. I don't know, it just kind of betrays the aesthetic a little bit somehow. It's sort of looks a little bit at odds with everything else that's going on. I mean, it's fine. It is what it is. It's sort of a necessary evil, but if I was going to peg something as being out of place, it would be that. Of course, at the front here, as I mentioned, you've got the robot mode head just kind of hid by these little pieces here, which are actually made up of the sort of heel spurs from the robot mode. They don't want to sit in place at all. So this, yeah, and the head pops off as well, as you can just see there. It's just come off again, which is frustrating. The head does pop off quite a bit and did a couple of times during transformation, so that's annoying. But yeah, this whole assembly doesn't really peg in at all. It doesn't peg into each other on the sides like that. So that would have been good, because that would have created just that little bit more stability at the front. But you know what? Don't fiddle around with the head too much and it shouldn't come off. It does light up still in this mode, of course, as well, if you really want it to. I'll leave it up to you how best to position these spikes on the front of the vehicle mode, which of course are from the feet. I think they look really good like that, just kind of sticking out to the front and quite imposing. Of course, if you really want, you could fold them backwards. I don't know, maybe you could have them kind of deploying, like that. Whatever you prefer, to be honest. I think it looks cool like that. The hose looks really cool here, the way it kind of bends around like that. No fear about that getting broken whatsoever, so that's really good. Yeah, I kind of like the way it tapers in at the side here. Initially I was like, oh, where does it go? But actually it sort of seems to fit and slink around quite naturally, and looks quite ace. Of course, his 3 LED jets end up on the rear here. In fact, that's the whole robot mode back section, having kind of folded around there and locked into the arms. And yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna light them up again, just because it would involve popping them off. I mean, yeah, look, there you go. I told you, didn't I, that I wouldn't be using these very often, and already I've transformed it once, and I'm like, nah, man, I can't be doing with that. So yeah, it is what it is. You'll just have to imagine it. I will light up that cannon for you though, as that looks really, really awesome, and it's nice and easy to do as well. So really dig how that looks. Of course, it looks just as good in tank mode as it does in robot mode. So yeah, dig it. You can also, as I mentioned earlier, peg this blade weapon into the other port on the elbow. I had it on the top there initially, and you can peg it into now what's the side, just there. Personally, I think it looks better on the top though, as this configuration leaves the hand looking a little bit more obviously exposed. So again, short of fiddling around with that and finding some other way for it to sit, I think, yeah, that weapon is going to look better on the top. Plus it doesn't leave this little empty hole there, kind of obviously on the top of the tank mode. So there you go. That's the tank mode. And yeah, overall, I like it. I got to be honest. I'm into it. It's a weird design, but I feel like at this point, if you're into this kind of thing, you'll like it. You'll be into the weird design, And overall, you know what? I'm warming to this guy quite a bit. I mean, it's a really tough one. It's a really, really tough one because the design itself is lovely. The sculpt is beautiful. I mean, obviously, all credit to the official design. Let's be fair, because that's where the credit lies, realistically. Someone else has taken it, upscaled it, retooled it, whatever, but realistically, the credit lies with the original design team. Here, I like what they've done in terms of I can't talk too much about the redesign, having not handled the original figure, but I like what this looks like. The big letdown, of course, is the joints. You don't need me to go on about it again. You've already heard me talk about it quite a bit in this video. The joints are terrible, absolutely terrible. The joints in the legs, particularly the hips, are just abysmal. Really not up to par whatsoever. That is bad. The joints in the arms are similar, particularly in the right arm, which of course has to, supposedly hold up the cannon, on his arm. That is just unforgivable. So those are the major letdowns for me. If you can get past that, or that doesn't bother you, or you're happy to fix it, or whatever else, then yes, it's a recommendation from me, I would say, because he looks awesome and the design is nice. So what else can I say? If you're after this kind of thing and you think that it looks cool, you're going to enjoy it as long as you don't mind those joints or you're prepared for that, If you are worried about the joints, or you're kind of on the fence thinking, maybe it'll be okay, no, sorry, but the joints will be an issue, guaranteed, because they're just abysmal. So realistically, you know what, I can give it a recommendation as long as you know what you're letting yourself in for. And on the understanding that actually there may be further QC errors on any other copy. I think, as I say, I have heard a couple of people mentioning about the hips being a major issue. I have not had that, so maybe I've just been really lucky. And buyer beware, I would say, in that respect, because who knows? So yeah, if you know what you're getting into and you're happy with the fact that the joints will be loose, then it's a 2. If you're not happy with that, then don't do it. That would be my honest advice. So that's Zeus Toys Shockwave. Thanks again for watching, and if you haven't yet, don't forget to drop me a like if you enjoyed today's video, and maybe subscribe to the channel whilst you're at it. Quick final shout out to everyone who already supports me on Patreon, details of which coming up at the end of the video in just a moment. Otherwise, that's it from me, so enjoy the rest of your day. TTFN.